Good evening. Welcome to the January 21st edition of the Downers Grove Village Council meeting. We're glad you're with us tonight. As is our tradition, please join us in rising and reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it serves, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Megan, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jose?
Here.
Commissioner Earl?
Here.
Commissioner Wallace? Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Here.
Commissioner Kolovany?
Here.
Commissioner Gray?
Here.
Mayor Burnett?
Here. Thank you for that. As Rich was alluding to earlier before we got started, we have one missing tonight. Commissioner Wallace is not with us, so we've crunched us all together a little bit. If you're in council chambers tonight, there are copies of the agenda on either side of the room on the shelves. If you're watching at home, if you go to downers.us in the lower left-hand corner, there is a link to this week's meetings. You'll find that same information there. There are several opportunities through the course of the evening for public comment, and we'll make sure we point those out as we go along. So is there a motion concerning previous council minutes?
Mayor Barnett, I move that the council adopt the minutes from January 14th, 2020 as presented.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments from the council on those? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Thank you. And just like that, we are at the first opportunity for public comments. This section of the meeting, we give everybody an opportunity to weigh in on things not on tonight's agenda. So if you're here this evening with a subject you'd like to bring to us or a question you'd like to ask not on something that's on tonight's agenda, please come on down to the podium and let us know what's on your mind.
Yeah, my name is Michael Hahn. I live on Glendenning in Downers Grove, 4040 Glendenning. I'm concerned about the property that's across the street from where I live. The address is
4023 Glendenning.
Yeah, the house has been abandoned for, well, it's been vacant for probably 2 years. Garage is in bad shape. Shed behind it is in bad shape. The shed is in bad shape. It certainly needs a coat of paint. I've been in the house. It's not livable. The owner of the property basically got screwed when he bought it, because I totally believe the property is not buildable in any sense of the word. And I'm wondering what can be done about this.
Thanks for coming. If you would take a few minutes, the guy at the end of the desk there with the glasses, make sure he gets all this information in detail. We have various policies that have to do with expectations about maintenance, and we'll start in through our community development department trying to locate the owner and make sure things are up to par. There is a process forward should that not work out, but we do have to work through that entire process, and it really starts with giving him all the information.
Okay. Well, over the past, I've lived here for close to 50 years. Over the past 50 years, one person after another has gotten screwed buying that piece of property. And I think some of the responsibility lies on the village, because every time a new home goes up, more water comes down that hill.
I hear you. There's a permitting process for each, whether it's each house over the last 50 years. It went through some system, and the only thing I can say to that is over the last 4 to 6 years, we have made those rules about building much more difficult to try and prevent those kinds of things. But as it sits now, there's a home there and there's an owner, and we need to work through the process of trying to get it cleaned up.
Right. I'm sort of hoping that eventually maybe the village can get a grant of some type and buy that piece of property and incorporate it into the wetland.
So I live at 4022 across
Okay.
the street, directly across the street. And my husband and I did an extensive amount of research on our property before we purchased it and had to do quite a bit of engineering and excavating. And that property across the street, 4023, is 100% in the LPDA. And I know I've heard builders and various people say, oh, you can get a variance and you can, put a big pile of dirt in the middle and build it up and be able to build a house. But the way that I understand the engineering and LPDA versus non-LPDA and cut and fill, I'm not sure it's buildable. And I know it is advertised in its MLS as being, come and build your dream home. And I know that that's not something under your jurisdiction, but I do feel people might be misled at the sensitivity of the drainage issues at that spot, and that it really may not be possible to even put a structure up there. So that's my concern, is that someone could guide that into being incorporated into the wetland to help with the retention in that area.
Yeah,
Thank
good
you.
thoughts. Appreciate you coming. Thank you. Any other subjects not on tonight's agenda?
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, and staff, good evening. My name is Patrick Comer. In the month of December, the Chicago Tribune ran a series of articles on the environment, one of which was discussed the status of coral animals in our oceans, and it included a description of the movie titled Chasing Coral. I reviewed the film, which highlights an advertising executive who finds his career disappointing. He had a lot of difficulty justifying the sales of toilet paper, and so he uses his skills as a photographer and a scuba diver to follow a team of scientists and filmmakers. And these scientists and filmmakers capture evidence of our warming ocean and the unprecedented increase in the rate of coral reef bleaching. I decided to sponsor a screening of the film open to the public with no admission fee. Admission is free, open to the public, Saturday, February 1st at Downers Grove Library in the main meeting room downstairs, right here on Curtis Street. Movie will begin at 10 a.m. The doors open at 9:30. Following the screening is a comment, question, and answer period hosted by Dr. Ross Cunning, a research marine biologist from the Shedd Aquarium. I've sent notices to the email addresses of the mayor, commissioners, and the clerk's office, and I have additional copies for those who would like one. Please talk with everyone about this opportunity to spark scientific curiosity, learn more about our oceans, and inspire people to act on a community level. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that, and thank you for coming and broadcasting tonight. Any other subjects not on tonight's agenda? Okay, seeing none, we will move on then to the consent agenda. Is there a motion?
Mayor Barnett, I move that the council adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Any comments from council on the consent agenda? Any comments or questions from the audience on tonight's consent agenda? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously as well. Thank you. Just like that, we're already on item 6 of tonight's agenda, moving right along. This is the active agenda portion of our meeting. These are subjects which typically have been discussed at least once at a prior meeting, and we expect to take some action on tonight. There'll be some public commentary and question opportunities here as well. So with that, is there a motion for the first item on tonight's active agenda?
Mayor Barnett, I move that the council adopt an ordinance authorizing special uses to provide off-site parking over 1,000 feet away from the use served and to establish an accessory use before the principal use is established at 4110 Finley Road as presented.
Second.
Any audience questions or comments on tonight's first item? Okay, council comments or questions? Marge?
Mr. Mayor, I believe this particular use at this location has negative impacts which are unique to this operation and different from a standard warehouse parking lot. And for those reasons, I will be voting no on this.
Thank you. Any other council comments or questions? Leslie?
Yeah, I was just going to say that based on some of the traffic impact studies that we've received and the use of this, it actually appears as though traffic might not be as bad as if we were to have a business that would have more kind of large and heavy trucks and semis, which tend to kind of back things up a little bit more than just the typical vehicle traffic might. I do actually appreciate the fact that the reason why this 1,000-foot separation is here is because there's private property in between those buildings and that parking lot, which also happens to be a wetland, which is, as we have heard, is actually pretty important to make sure that we protect and ensure that any potential stormwater impacts are helped mitigated by both the ordinances that we have in effect, which they'll be following with this parking lot, but also it's beneficial to have even that wetland there. So I hope that the businesses that take that into account, I appreciate the fact that at least for now, we're going to make sure that we're taking care of our stormwater. And I think this is a pretty cut and dry and appropriate special use.
Thank you. Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree that this is an appropriate special use. I want to thank the petitioner and staff for working together to get the traffic information with regard to points north of the development. Obviously, there's an impact, but it is smaller certainly than I anticipated it to be. And the grades are staying within the same level. Obviously, we've got traffic concerns already at the corner of Finley, Belmont, and Ogden, and we'll see some additional traffic there, but to be candid, it's not like that intersection wasn't already a mess. The special use criteria appear to be met, and I'll be supporting it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Greg.
Mayor, I just wanted to thank the Plan Commission for their insight on this property and this project. And I think I'll be voting in favor of it this evening, but I think the incremental traffic impact that was provided in the information was very helpful. And so I just want to thank everyone involved in that.
Thank you, Kevin. Rich?
Yeah, this is an offshoot from Bridge Point developing those warehouses. I was seated on the Plan Commission when they came in front of us, and I got all excited when I first saw it. I thought, wow, we're going to have another Esplanade building there with, wonderful office buildings, the best and highest use, only to find out later they put in warehouses by right. So one of the things we deal with in Downers Grove is a switch from the bricks and mortar economy to the gig economy, and that includes Amazon being a big piece of that. A lot of the stores we see downtown are moving towards more restaurants and things like that as opposed to shopping. Bricks and mortar retailers are continuing to struggle. Shopping malls are continuing to close. So in comes Amazon, which in one fell swoop will fill 2 of the Bridge buildings virtually instantaneously, which I think it goes to the fact that Bridge made a good investment in Downers Grove, and I'm pleased to see that that is coming to fruition. I also read the outline of the traffic study. I do feel that having that van traffic interspersed during the day would create less of an impact than an entire office building letting out between 4:30 and 5:30. This, however, does not negate the responsibility of our staff and our traffic department to work as aggressively as they can with the county and the state on either ends of this intersection, with a service level D turning into an F at Belmont, Warrenville, Ogden, Finley, that whole combination there. And then also on the north end of that with Finley and Butterfield also going from a D to an F. So anything we can do to implore them that this is important. The other thing that struck me about that is if you're traveling down that road, you're working in Downers Grove, you're probably living in Downers Grove. If you weren't, you wouldn't take that route. You jump on 355 or you jump on 88, going in either direction. So I intend to vote for it as well.
Thank you, Rich. I won't repeat what any of my colleagues say. I will be voting in favor of this. I just want to highlight Greg's apt use of the word mess. That what we deal with often is managing as best we can, really shepherding, guiding to some degree, never really fixing some of the challenges that occur when municipalities start to grow and start to struggle to fit within their own boundaries. This is an improvement to our community and our economy. It's a jobs creator and an economic boon, and I'm thankful that we have the opportunity to deal with it. So hopefully we'll all manage that, as Rich said, with our other associated government agencies as best we can, and look forward to the future. So with that, Megan, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Gray?
Aye.
Commissioner Kolovany?
Aye.
Mayor Burnett?
Aye. That motion passes.
We missed that.
Oh, did we miss? Oh, my goodness, that's terrible. Megan, let's run through that one more time. That's all right, we'll get it right.
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Excuse me. Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Gray?
Aye.
Commissioner Kolovany?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Nay.
Mayor Burnett?
Aye, that motion passes 5-1. Thank you for redoing that, Marge. Apologies.
No problem.
We have another item on our active agenda tonight concerning a public right-of-way. Is there a motion?
Mayor, I move that the council adopt an ordinance vacating a certain portion of a public alley right-of-way in the village of Downers Grove, adjacent to and in between the properties located at 304 Prairie Avenue and 4736 and 4740 Florence Avenue as presented.
Second.
Thank you for that. Are there any audience comments or questions on this subject? Please.
Good evening. I'm Paul Lagno. I've met most of you. I live at 304 Prairie, and Brent is here from the Florence Avenue as well. I thank you for the time last week and a couple weeks before that, and thank you for the time this past Saturday at the coffee at the library. Just two critiques about that, if it's okay.
Sure.
Donuts next time. And have a key to get in at 8:45. Anyway, I don't want to be hard-nosed. I just want to, do I get a clicker for this, or do I just tell you when to go? Okay. I'll go like that. So this is my final say on this. As you know from last week, I don't think that the $545,000 is fair market. So I just want to go through just a real quick history of this property so you understand where I'm coming from. From 1995 to 2013, when Mr. Spahn died, he lived in this home, 304 Prairie Avenue, a home that was valued for most of that time at over $1 million by the township. He paid $18,000 a year in taxes for most of the time he lived at that home. So Mel, as you might know, owned a custom home. He was a custom home builder. He built homes in Downers Grove for many, many years. And this was the home that he built for himself and his wife, and they lived in it for over almost 20 years. His wife died a year after he did. The entire time they lived there, they did not have a paved driveway or a paved apron around their garage for the entire time. Now, how many million-dollar homes do you know of that don't have a paved driveway or at least a paved apron around their garages when they want to pull into their garage? It was gravel the entire time. So it became underwater, was a distressed property. We bought it in 2018. We bought it for with back taxes, $325,000. And it was valued at that time at over $1 million by the township. We wondered, why didn't $1 million home have a driveway? No idea. We asked the heirs. They said, "Oh, Dad was stubborn," you know. But you know what? Now I know why Mel Spahn did not pave his apron around his driveway. And now I know why he didn't pave try to get the permission to pave the alleyway. And by the way, Mel's wife had multiple sclerosis, as Marge knows. You know, can you imagine having to get out of your vehicle with that condition on a gravel? Anyway, we have found the answers. The answers is Mel paid to pave the road in front of his house. He paid for that because the village wouldn't do it. And the village promised him, and there's testimony at the Planning Commission on this, that Dan Blaney, who's the son of the next-door neighbor, who on at least one occasion, I think he said a couple occasions, testified on behalf of Mel because the city promised to pave that alley for him. And he was going to wait for the city to do that. It was on the agenda for the city to do that, and the city never did it. The village never honored their promises to Mel Spone, who paid for the street, Prairie Avenue, to go from his property all the way to the end. So, we buy the house in 2018. We go to the Community Development Department. We apply for a permit for a fence, so our dogs would have a place to go in the backyard without running away. So we get this privacy fence. There was no inspection before we put the fence in, no inspection during, no inspection after, which I found out later. Oh, that's just pay your money, put the fence up, don't worry about any inspections. So now comes 2019. And you can go to the next slide. So I'm sorry, we're still in 2018, 1 month after we put the fence in. This is a city tree that came down on top of our house, a diseased tree, which we knew was diseased. We talked to the tree people, even though they deny it. There were 7 of these trees in that alley behind our home. One of them came down in the snowstorm in November of 2018. On top of our house, the fire and police, 3 a.m. in the morning, were just great, wonderful. Put us at ease, checked everything for us, made sure there were no power lines down. 3 o'clock in the morning, wonderful. I thought, oh, Downers Grove is the best place to live. Then the city came, they took the tree down within 48 hours, off of our house. They cleaned up the yard, but they had 6 other diseased trees that had to come down, which they took down within, I think it was 3 months. But we sent the bill to the city because it's a city tree that came down on top of our house. It cost us over $2,800 to repair. We sent the invoice. We thought from our initial contact with the tree people and with the lawyers of the city, no problem, we're going to get paid. But then we get the letter from your insurance company, okay, that's fine, we'll roll over. So now we're in 2019. We've lived in the house for less than 6 months. I go back to community development on 3 occasions, trying to get a permit to pave an alleyway in your village. And we reach an impasse. It's just crazy stuff that they want me to do. Take a look at the right side here, okay? You try to get into your 4-car garage with a 25-foot opening from the alleyway. So they tell me, Stan is right there. Stan says, just pay us $7,000. You can do whatever you want. How does that sound to you guys? How does it sound to you guys? My goodness. We're fed up. I get bad advice. I thought I could put concrete in the alleyway, which you can, but it only has to be 8 inches thick instead of what I put in 4 inches. You're allowed, Marge, to put 8 inches of concrete in an alleyway. You Guess how much asphalt you put in an alleyway? 3 inches. I put in 4 inches of concrete. I thought, okay, they're gonna come, Stan's gonna come and say, I caught you, all right, you know, and I would have been done in 3 more hours. 3 more hours, the whole thing would have been done. It's 3/4 done. And so now they're threatening me with $750 a day, tear it out or pay us just $7,000. So I'm rolling over. But after this other fiasco with somebody saying that we had 2 families living in our home, which we did not, even though we're cited 3 times for it.
Hey, Paul.
All right, I'm not getting into that.
One subject
Let's
tonight.
go
One
back-
subject
Let's go
tonight.
to the next slide, sorry. So, anyway, you see the Google map there. You see the alleyway, you see cars there. You cannot turn in, you know, with what the city wanted us, or village wanted us to do was not reasonable, not acceptable. And I felt I had no choice, even though I'm accused now of not being compliant. Okay. Anyway, go to the next slide. This is your resolution. This is what you should be going by. It says, prior to the petition being considered by the village council, the petitioner must submit an appraisal conducted by a certified appraiser. The village, in its sole discretion, may consider an alternate assessment of the current market value of the parcel in lieu of appraisal. That's what I'm provided to you, but let's go now to the, just one other thing from this resolution. The amount and type of compensation, if any, to be required as a condition to the effectiveness. So the village council has sole determination on what they can charge for this piece, this small piece of land. Next slide, last thing, this is what I don't think is fair. There's no basis for it. This is in some place that talks nothing about alley vacation. It's called park and school donation. I do understand it better now since I talked to Dave extensively about it on Saturday, but I don't think it applies to this case. I think that what applies to this case is the last sentence: the council may consider an alternate method of assessing the current market value of the parcel in lieu of an appraisal. The alternate method has been done in residential areas. That's where I live. So these next, you can just go through these. You have all seen these 8 slides. Go through them all, Mike. Only one of them, one of those properties is over 250,000. All of them are closer to 175 or 200,000 per acre. So the next slide, please, Mike. So your decision. I'm willing to go to 250,000. I'd like someone on the council to say, I move Lagno and Miller can get their alley vacation for the basis of 250,000. That's a choice that you can make right now. Next slide, Mike. So that's the question. What's the fair market value? The fair market value is not 545,000. My goodness, I paid less than 350,000 for the entire home.
Thank you. Any other comments on this? Are we on this agenda item? This agenda item?
Well, I could say something to the effect of what he's saying. Last time I was here.
Okay, if it's on this agenda item, please approach the podium and speak in the microphone.
Good evening, my name is Rose Kraft. I've been here before quite a few times. I live at 1110 Warren, Downers Grove. Well, I was listening to this gentleman speak. The last time I was here, I was listening to another gentleman speak. He had trouble 27 years trying to get a tree torn down. And I can see how bad you all treat the seniors here. And this should not be happening to us. And the same thing with Oak Tree Towers. They've been stealing from those poor people, well, actually not poor, but older citizens for 22 years.
Rose, we're on one subject, and that's not it. You
Okay.
need to keep your comments to this subject, which is the question about the motion made about vacating an alleyway.
Well, this wasn't an alleyway, it was how seniors are being treated.
Okay,
And it's not good, it needs to be changed.
okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions on this item on the agenda? Okay, are there any council comments or questions? Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, could you put back up the illustration with regard to the driveway and turning into the garage? That's the one, right there. Thank you. I'd like to start by saying, somebody wants to buy the alleyway next to their home, feel free, go right ahead. We're happy to sell it to you, I would think. And I intend to vote in favor of this. But
Greg, can you speak up a little bit? I'm sorry. I'm not
happily,
part of it.
more than happy to sell the alleyway. I think that's perfectly fine. I also have no problem with the $545,000 per acre value. What concerns me is the idea that somehow that what staff has done is inappropriate. What I've heard tonight is an admission that you knew that at least a portion of that area was not your property, and then you built on it in violation of the code. I'm sorry you got caught, but you got caught. And I say this as somebody who is in pretty much the same condition. What you might think is my driveway is a village alleyway. And the number of times I've asked them to pave it is 0, and I know that if I did ask them, the number of times they would give me an affirmative response is 0. It's owned by the village. If I want to pave it, I'll go ahead and buy it. I haven't yet, and there's a reason for that. But the idea that the village has somehow acted inappropriately in enforcing its code is just plain wrong. So while I'm perfectly happy to vote for this, I have to say I've been disappointed by your presentation. We have a code, and it's right that it's enforced, and you built on property that doesn't belong to you. We can rectify that by selling it to you, and I'm happy to do that. But when you break the law, there are consequences. Thank you, Mayor.
Any other council comments or questions? Let me add to Greg's comments just a little bit, Paul. One possible course here is for this to not be for sale, at which point you'd be spending whatever money you spent, plus you'd be spending money on demo and restoration. And there's a process that's followed here, and I understand that you're questioning the fair market value, and you want to make that point. But what we have been doing since the beginning on this thing is try and follow a set process that's repeatable for a couple reasons. The first one is the next person that buys Greg's house will look at his survey and he'll understand that driveway is not his, and he'll know exactly what the process is by which he can make it his. And it won't be a question of what one guy in planning might have said or what 3 people on the council's opinion in the moment might be. There'll be a repeatable, predictable process that treats everybody, senior or otherwise, exactly the same way. And that's what we're trying to make sure we do. For that reason, I want to make sure that we continue with the process we have. If somebody at some point down the line says, I like this process, it should be different, then we'll talk about changing the process. But the process that you started down, that we're in right now, is the same one we're using repeatedly and consistently, and we're going to continue to be repeated and consistent with it. That's really important to this village. It's very important for this issue. It's important for every other issue that we deal with, that we treat everybody that comes to us with exactly the same predictability and equity over time.
Isn't that what the ordinance says?
What the ordinance says is that if we want to hear about different values, we can consider that. And what we've chosen to do is not do that, because the moment you start doing that, the moment the 6 or 7...
Bob, how can you say...
I'm out, one at a time.
Okay, go
The
ahead.
moment the 6 or 7 of us start deciding what we think fair market value in any one parcel over the 18,000 of them through town is the minute we start treating people differently based on a momentary opinion, and we're trying to avoid doing that.
I totally disagree with you.
I understand that.
Totally.
I understand that, and that's okay, but I'm just trying to explain, you've had your
That's your job, Bob.
You've had your opportunity to explain your vantage.
To treat me
Paul,
individually.
Hey, Paul, stop.
Not like everybody else.
Paul, stop.
I'm sorry.
One at a time. I'm not going to chase you away from the podium, but we're only going to talk one at a time,
Good.
okay?
I'm listening.
Our job is to make decisions about how to treat these various issues that come before us. And what we try very hard to do is treat them in an equitable fashion that's predictable. Now, you don't like that version, and you think we should take some of what the code says we can
I'm
and apply
following
it.
code. I'm
And that,
following
I understand that.
ordinance.
But we're choosing, I think, most of us here are choosing not to do that because we want to make sure that the next person that's in your shoes knows what to expect. The next person that goes to buy a piece of property in our town can reasonably understand what to expect. That's my purpose, my reason for the decision I'm making. I can't speak for everybody, but I'm doing it for me right now. So I agree with Greg. I intend to vote for the motion that was passed tonight, which uses the 545 base, and the reason for it is because I want to make sure we're predictable and equally applying our ordinances. Are there any other council comments? Marge?
I also, like Greg, my house backs up to an alleyway. In fact, the same exact alleyway as shown here, about a block away. I remember when Mr. Spahn built this house, and I always wondered why he didn't put in a regular driveway. And I thought, well, I'll ask him, because he drives around the block on his scooter quite regularly, and we were on good terms, and we actually talked a number of times about it. But I realized, and I knew then, he deliberately chose to place his house in this fashion. He deliberately chose to take advantage of the fact that this alleyway easement didn't need to be paved, and he could get a free driveway out of it and build a bigger house. And that was what he wanted to do. And to me, it always seemed a little bit not great, but that was his choice. And he never blamed the village for anything. He never said the village didn't do something they were supposed to do. He was always okay with the gravel. I, on the other hand, saw this and thought to myself, oh my gosh, there's a small house on the other side of this alleyway from me. What if somebody were to tear down that house and then put a big garage up in the back and do the same thing? Throw down a bunch of gravel and make an alleyway out of what, in the way with my house is situated, I face Florence Avenue, and this is all my backyard space. I would now have an alley with gravel that people are driving up and down in my backyard. And I, at that point, decided that wasn't what I wanted. I approached the neighbors, I approached staff. Staff explained to me what I would have to go through to buy the alleyway easement. I approached my neighbors, we all agreed. I never questioned once how they valued it or why they valued it as they did. I was just happy to preserve the green space in my backyard. I wasn't trying to take advantage of anybody. I wasn't trying to use it for something it wasn't. I just wanted to keep what looked like my backyard. I can't build anything on it. Even if I were to, I don't think I would throw gravel down. I suppose I could, but that seems to be silly when actually what I was going for is trying to keep it green and hopefully at some point maybe landscape it a little bit better and plant flowers on it. The neighborhood still uses what is now my backyard and has been for years, and I've been paying taxes on and mowing as an alleyway. They waltz right through it. It doesn't bother me. That's fine. In my opinion, I don't think that staff could have possibly told you that anything that you were saying, that you could or couldn't pave it that way, that you could just give them $7,000 and go your way and everything would be fine. These are the same people I dealt with 10 years ago. Nothing's different, and they've answered every single question I've ever had about anything like this, and they've always been upfront. Furthermore, Commissioner Jose knows what I'm saying is the truth, because he and I have had extensive conversations about our own situations, because we're both in the same situation. He chose not to purchase his, I chose to purchase mine. And it it is what it is. Everybody gets to do, if you're lucky enough to have that opportunity. My dad said to me, I remember when I was talking with him, is God making any more land adjacent to your house? No. If no is the answer, maybe you should buy this, if that's what you want to keep it, is green. And I think that's the way, if you want to keep it concrete, the best way to do it is, or whatever it can go in there, I don't know. I was never told it could be, I was actually told it could never be concrete. I was always told maybe asphalt, always rock, but never concrete. So if they're making an exception for you to put in concrete, you should be glad, because that was never an option before. So, I'm not changing my mind on the valuation. I think staff has, when they changed the method of valuation, they did it very consistently. Everyone before you was charged, in a certain time frame, was charged a set pattern for how they came up with this amount, and yours doesn't differ in any way substantially than the people coming before you. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Kavanaugh?
Yeah, I'd like to weigh in on this as well. First of all, the Spahns did not have to build such a large house. This apparently was a smart guy. He built himself $1 million house, and for 20 years he was okay with gravel. I happened to grow up with a gravel driveway. It was really hard shoveling snow, but that didn't matter. We had to do it anyway. And for some number of years, we lived with that. Some number of years, Mr. Spahn and his wife lived with it. And, God rest their souls, they passed on. You got a great deal on $1 million house. You knew what the plat of survey said. You can't build or buy without having a plat of survey. You can't get a loan without having a plat of survey. So you knew from the get-go this was not your property, it was somebody else's property, and which would have been fine. You were free to continue using that gravel as long as you wanted to. You can come and go as much as you want, but you made the decision that you wanted concrete. I like concrete better than gravel, but I would never expect that I would put a driveway on my neighbor's property or property that is owned by somebody else. This property happens to be owned by 40...
I understand what you're saying.
Let me finish.
Let's just talk about the value of the property and not
You're out of order.
this other stuff.
Paul?
I understand. I'm
All
not,
right,
I'm
stop
not
a
here to be
second. Stop.
lectured.
Just stop a second.
I'm not here to be lectured to.
You also don't have the floor.
Okay?
Hang on.
Let's talk about the value of the property.
Paul, listen a minute.
Okay, go ahead. I'm listening.
I'm going to give you the last word, but we're going to talk one at a time.
Got it.
And the six people up here may drift
I got
into
it.
historical subjects.
Thank
Ring
you
a bell?
very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Rich?
All right. So, but you decided to put concrete on somebody else's land. You don't have to buy this. We're not forcing you to buy this. I'm going to vote in favor of it, so you can buy it. You can build a beautiful driveway and use it for as long as you want.
Thank you.
Any other?
Yeah.
Kavanaugh, please.
Mr. Lagner, I just wanted to first say thank you for taking the time to come present. I know that this is an issue that can't be easy to stand in front of us. I appreciate you taking the time and at least presenting what you have laid out before us. I'm voting in favor of the recommendation to sell the land, but I think in kind of piggybacking on what the mayor said, in the spirit of establishing a set of standard operating procedures that allow us going forward to do things as effectively and efficiently on behalf of the village, I'm supporting that. But in this moment, as we are differing on what we're talking about here today, I just didn't want you to leave here without you knowing that you've been heard. If that, we can disagree on the position of this and the direction of this, but I just wanted to personally thank you for presenting what you presented today.
Thank you.
Any other council comments? Go ahead. Wrap it up.
So I think it's very, very consistent for one of you to have the courage to move to what is fair market value based on the comps that were given by competent long-term real estate agents of this city. Every case should be individual. This is not about something across the board. This is not about something that needs to be standardized by you or by anyone. Read the resolution, read your own ordinance. You have the power to determine fair market value. There's nothing in this Parks and Recreation, what is it called? Parks and Recreation ordinance. No, Parks and Schools, I'm sorry. Nothing in there that talks about how you got to the 545,000, how it was determined, why it's 545,000. You explained it to me, Bob, on Saturday. If some developer comes in and wants to buy some land and build on it and puts a good house on it, sure, the land could be worth $275,000 alone, on splitting up an acre of land. That's totally different than what you're considering tonight. Totally different. You need to treat each one of these individually for what the land is worth. It's that simple. It's in your codes.
Thank you. Any other council comments? Megan, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Jose?
Aye.
Commissioner Earl?
Aye.
Commissioner Gray?
Aye.
Commissioner Colomani?
Aye.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit?
Aye.
Mayor Burnett?
Aye, that motion passes 6-0. We do not have a first reading portion of our meeting tonight. Takes us to the manager's report. Dave, you have anything for us?
Thank you, Mayor Barnett. Just a quick update on facilities planning. The facilities plan discussion we had originally planned for tonight will take place in mid to late February. We are still proceeding on that high priority action item. This short delay will allow us more time to further develop an option with a potential partner with a local government here in town. So look for more on this project in mid to late February. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Mayor and council member reports. This is a portion of our meeting where mayor and council members often report out on either activities going on in the community of interest to them or they think might be of interest to you, or other activities they have in their official capacity. So with that, I'll look to my left and start to my right. Rich, do you have anything?
No report, Mayor.
Leslie?
I was just going to recommend everyone check out the Chasing Coral on Saturday, the first that was already mentioned at 10 a.m. at the Downers Grove Public Library.
Thank you. Kavanaugh, you have anything tonight?
No report, Mayor.
Marge?
Historical Society is having a presentation tomorrow night at Emmett's. If you're interested in landmarking your older home, at least 50 years old, they're going to have an educational session, and it'll be starting at 6:30, I believe, tomorrow night.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's sold out. So,
I think
if you wanted to sign up for the wait list,
there you go.
you can go to Eventbrite, search Downers Grove Historical Society, but I stopped my advertising efforts.
Great that it's filled up.
And it was free. I mean, it's checked in full. We're not charging anything for it.
Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. After a one-year hiatus, the Grove Foundation is bringing back its Passport to Dining. So the tickets aren't available yet, but put it on your calendar, March the 4th of this year from 6 to 9 p.m. Participating restaurants include Ballydoyle, Another Round, Orange and Brew, which is having their food catered in by Great Harvest, Gatto's, and Cadence. The tickets will be $30, and if they will be once again sold at Anderson's Bookstore, but if you want a shortcut, see me. I joined the board last year, so please put March 4th on your calendar. It's a great event and raises money for a local charitable organization that does a lot of great work. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Greg. I don't have anything except to mention you've heard tonight about a volunteer put-on movie at the library about a local historic organization that's trying to help residents be a part of that community, and a local charitable organization that takes the time to raise money and distribute it through the community by putting events that bring us all together in our downtown. It's a fantastic community. There's always something going on. The one advice I can give is dial yourself in the world of social media because it's just a lot of good happening, and you can find something almost anytime you're looking. I have no other report. I'd entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you. Good night.